Hello and welcome to Caged In, your weekly dose of Nick Cage, where I chart the career of Nicolas Cage through his filmography. This week I'll be talking about his first time outing with director Nick Powell, who he reunited with in 2019 for the film Primal. But we're not here to talk about that. No, we're here to talk about Outcast, which sees Nicolas Cage team up with Hayden Christensen in this Crusader action adventure movie. And this week I'll be joined by Bob and Joe of Tonight with Bob and Joe. This was a fantastic conversation. It's sprawling. It goes all over the place. It's absolutely fun. Long-time listeners of the podcast will very much know Bob and Joe by now. Bob has very much become a part-time co-host on the podcast, and Joe drops in every now and then and is always fun and insightful. So without further ado, get stuck in and listen to our chat about Outcast. A drug addict tries to connect with his past while trying to do some good. That sounds good, right? Well, think again. This week, Nick Cage plays Galleon in Outcast, alongside Hayden Christensen. Remember him? I'm joined by 10th Caged In guest, Bob Turnbull. How are you, Bob?
I'm very well, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all well considered having to watch Outcast. But
That's so harsh, man. Go on.
however, I'm not just joined by Bob. Seeing as this is a poor representation of what the Middle Ages is really like, I'm also joined by a guest who was here for the last time we saw the Middle Ages painted in such a bizarre and frankly baffling way. Joe Gardner. How are you, Joe?
It's great to be here, Petros. I'm doing good, man. Another crusading crusade.
You seem to have become the resident crusade expert. It seems to be you're the man in the field when it comes to the crusades.
I don't know how that's happened. I'm not sure if that's positive or negative, but it's true either way.
I feel slightly like I'm dragging you through the dirt of Nicolas Cage's career because this one is another. I don't know. I don't know if it's a low point or. I'm happy to say this because alongside this episode, I'll be releasing an interview I did with the writer of this film, who
Oh wow, incredible!
Who I found because his Twitter bio was, "I possibly wrote the worst Nicolas Cage film of all time."
Oh God!
And I just did a little search to find out. Like, I sometimes put into Twitter Nick Cage and see what comes up, and I saw that and I was like, well, I've 100% got to speak to this man.
I think he's being a little unfair on himself. I really think he's been a little unfair. The worst Nick Cage film, I don't know. I think he can get trumped by that one.
I know for certain he's been trumped by that because there are worse Nick Cage films that I have seen. So,
but same.
Before we get into talking about Outcast, guys, I'll start with Joe here and ask you a couple of questions. I'll ask you the first question, then we'll move over to Bob. And the first question is, if Nick Cage, he probably does drink, but what alcoholic beverage do you think Nick Cage would have a sip on?
This is a close one to my heart, and I've got to say, I mean, I've been thinking about it. Well, he's drinking quite nice in this. I know we're not talking about it, but I liked how he was drinking in this. I would feed him mead wine. I would feed him some homemade Loganberry mead wine. I think he'd love it from a tin cup.
Oh, perfect! Yeah, a tankard an
Yeah,
engraved tankard with a pyramid on it, with some type of engraving, like he's got on his he's got on his mausoleum in
yeah,
New
pyramid on
Orleans.
one side and a cross on the other, a St George's cross on the other.
Absolutely fantastic. And what about yourself, Bob? What do you think that Cage would drink?
First of all, you said before what Cage probably does drink, but we know that he definitely does drink. His last marriage was done while drunk, right? And I mean, and among other crazy stories involving alcohol and Cage. But anyway, where I'd like to take him to drink, or is that what I'd like to give him to drink?
What do you think he would drink?
I think he'd drink ale from Bath, like ale that's made not in a bath, but in the place that's called Bath. And I would serve him that because I'd know he would like that. He wants like strong, warm, tepid British ale.
Perfect. And where would you like to? Yeah, where would you like to take Cage for a drink? If you could take him anywhere in the world, where would you like to take him?
Originally, I was going to say that I wanted to take him to Walkabout, which is that Australian themed like bar. I thought we could eat some kangaroo meat together and drink some warm ale. But actually, I changed my mind. I would take him to the Weatherspoons in Exeter because it's got a really lovely window.
Lovely, lovely. And
Yeah,
yourself,
Bob's been
Joe?
talking about this Weatherspoons. It's called the Imperial, and it has a huge. I think Bob actually had this Weatherspoons cut out from a Weatherspoons magazine and placed on his wall a few years ago. I think there's a sort of montage of all of his favourite Weatherspoons. Where would I take him? I'd take him across the road to a pub called the Swordfish, a fisherman's pub. And I'd feed him the mead there. Yeah, yeah, it's right on the edge of England. I think he'd enjoy the boats, and I think he'd enjoy the sort of rough atmosphere,
Perfect.
and they'd love him.
Well, to the point of the Weatherspoons, have you guys ever seen that there is a book that is a collection of Weatherspoons carpets that like.
Oh yeah, I think I can't remember if you told me this. I need that book. That's a great fucking book, man.
Perfect. So I guess we need to chew at the fat of the main act, which is talking about Outcast. So,
Yeah.
what were your initial impressions?
Well, initially, what just like you mean like from after finishing it, or the like first time it started, like first 10 minutes?
Your just initial impression, yeah, just going in, like what were you like? Oh, like
Well, at first, I did think this is a lot like that other Nicolas Cage Crusader film. But actually, the first thing I thought was Hayden Christensen's hair looked like Jack Grealish from Aston Villa, and all of his mates looked like football players. But I did immediately realise that the action is way more stylish and kind of gritty than in the other Nicolas Cage Crusader film.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think this. I immediately, because I didn't even know what the film was going to be about. I hadn't looked up or seen a trailer, and when it started and it was Crusaders, I thought, oh fuck, you've got to be kidding me. I thought, but at the same time, I felt immediately pleasantly surprised because I thought this is way better. This seems like it's going to be way better than the last Crusading Cage film I saw. The the color grading was quite beautiful. I thought, hold on a minute, this is actually quite nice.
well, yeah, it's got this kind of like It's got like a oversaturation to the color palette, right? From the
Exactly. And also some shots almost look like they were like shot by like Terrence Malick. Like Joe was saying, they're like these point of view, like close up shots of reeds and grass, and then you've also got just beautiful shots of like mountains and deserts, and just like almost all the locations are really well chosen and really well depicted, like richly detailed.
well, one of the like funny things though that comes up first of all on the screen is it says like the Middle East 12th century. So we don't have like
Yeah.
an exact like pinpoint on time. We don't have like, do you know what I mean? Like when that like 1177 or do you know what I mean? We have no.
No, exactly. And then later on, when we finally go to the other location, it goes the Far East. So it
3
just
years
doesn't.
later, yeah, it says the Far East
Yeah,
3 years later, and it's like, well, we have no timestamp on when we were initially set. So it says the 12th century. So are we in the 13th century now? Like 3 years
Yeah.
later? I don't know. Were we on the cusp of a new century? I
Yeah,
have no idea.
yeah, it's interesting because I really did like the first 10 minutes. I thought, is this the exact same movie? Has Cage taken the exact same movie with different actors? Because immediately it gets into him as with. I mean, I'm going to be having to compare these two Crusader films. I think there's no other way to go about it for me. It's like the last Cage film to this Cage film. They were the last. These are the last two Cage films I've seen. So it's got these because it's got the same kind of you're here and it's medieval time or it's Far East. And I remember the other one was made up names that was like sort of Estonian. And then with this one, it's like immediately he's going, what are we doing here as Crusaders? And I thought, this is the same movie. Yeah, but with football players.
Well, yeah, and the other Crusader film you're talking about, of course, is Season of the Witch, where instead of Hayden Christensen, which like I have no idea what he has done between the years of doing the prequel trilogy for Star Wars and this. He's kind of like apart from
There's only
Jumper.
Jumper. That's what I was saying. The movie that's named after a fleece. That's the
Yeah.
only one I know of him doing.
Yeah, so it's and he's got this bizarre haircut which I can only like describe as, if you don't get the football reference, it's just this kind of like horrible like mullet faux hawk.
And also, he's got a permanent scowl that never leaves him throughout the entire film. He never stops scowling. He's drunk scowling or he's angry scowling.
Well,
We do have Nicolas Cage immediately with a nice growl, though, don't we? We do have him coming in immediately with a bit of ragey. So I was pretty chuffed about that.
Well, the thing is, this film, like, we should probably say off the bat that this film is just bookended with Cage. Like, we have a whole chunk in the middle that is sans Cage. It's kind of like and
yeah. It's a pleasure when he comes back into it. You're like, oh, thank Christ,
thank
whichever.
Hayden Christensen. Cage is back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man.
I've got to say, I can't remember what his accent was like in Season of the Witch, but I'm pretty sure he just sounded like Cage, didn't he?
Well, the accent he does in this is one of my notes, is what accent is Cage doing?
He starts at first. I was like, right, this is Scottish. He's Scottish. This is a Scottish thing. And then I was wondering if Cage felt from the sort of trying to react to Christensen's. Is it Christensen or Christian? Christensen's Scottish. I thought Cage went, well, I'll do a bit of Scottish, and then dropped it immediately, and then went back to Cage, a bit American, all in one sentence.
Well, this is a very interesting production because this is like a Chinese production. So
yeah, the company is called Yunnan. Is it Yunnan Film Group?
Yeah, so we have this story essentially that is anchored upon this thing of a Chinese royal family with the elderly king close to death, and he decides his successor will be his younger son as opposed to the older brash kind of warrior son, and then that causes friction with the older son killing the king, and then kind of
isn't that the plot to Gladiator? But except Maximus is like a little boy in that sense.
Well, there's also a few other sort of gladiator, because it feels a bit gladiatorish, and it's like oversaturations of the Maximus, right? There was the music,
What's really interesting, you saying about Gladiator, so the director, Nick Powell, has so many credits on IMDb, but not as a director. Has either second unit director, miscellaneous crew, or the one with the most credits is stunts. So he has 122 credits as stunts. And one of his miscellaneous credits, like miscellaneous crew, is on Gladiator.
No way. I mean, there's got to be. He must have been. Yeah, something's going on there.
That's ridiculous. I love that, man. I love that. You could feel the gladiator.
Yeah, it's like he was just kind of like miscellaneous crew. I'm not sure what that means. Like he was like just knocking about on set. By the sounds of it, he was just taking notes, going,
Yeah,
if
exactly. He's got a pair of he's got a pair of binoculars. He's just watching and taking notes.
oh, if I do a film, he's just going over to see what like, oh, what are they doing over there? Yeah, well, I'll nick a bit of that. I'll nick a bit of this. Like, and it's really interesting. So speaking to the writer, he made a point that this was supposed to be set in like the in England. This was supposed to be kind of
Oh right.
like an old like medieval tale in England, and um, when the director got brought on board and kind of the studios got involved, and then like, do you know what I mean? All the
It all changed. It all changed.
yeah, everything like,
And suddenly you got the funding from this Asian company.
yeah.
And yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I think that's one of the more interesting elements of it. I'm glad that it's not set in medieval England. I think that would have been a bit dull. I think that's kind of, we've had that before. I think it's actually quite, the stuff is, the stuff in the Far East is so slickly done. It's so sort of, it looks good. It's well filmed. It's almost slightly boring, but it's never badly done. So I think, yeah, I think that's one of the things that this film has on its side, that it's got this kind of Oriental vibe.
Well, one of the things with that though is like this suffered a lot because this actually got banned in Hong Kong because
Oh no way.
they had an issue, and I imagine like a lot of people, especially like in the times we're talking now, would have an issue with this. This is a film that very much has a white savior, like
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and Hong Kong especially took umbrage to that,
And
and
also, and he's a junkie as well, which like I really enjoyed that part when he started. I was getting a little bit bored, and then I liked this sort of, and I thought it was going to be Cage. There's a scene where there's this white person with a big hat on, so you can't tell, and it starts cutting to his eyes and what he's seeing, and it looks, it's all blurred and strange, and he starts fighting like that drunk guy from Tekken, really good. And I was like, actually, this is pretty cool. Quite like this stuff. Christensen, yeah.
The other thing I really love in that scene is the fact that when the guards want to sort of, humiliate him, they can wee on command. Literally, they just immediately start weeing. And I thought, I really respect an enemy that can just wee whenever he wants.
well, I guess that yeah, the Black Guard as they're called, like they look like they are like run to like they're a ship-shape organization. They're not messing about a lot of the time. Like they look like they will do whatever they want at the like whatever their commander desires.
Yeah.
Drop of a hat. So if
Yeah,
that's we on a man, now fucking do it.
Yeah, and I see what you mean about this, because they're supposed to be, the king's guard, the emperor's guard, or this is like the man who runs the kingdom, and it's his guard, and a whole bunch of them can get destroyed immediately by essentially a smacked up sort of Scottish guy, and you're not really sure what's going on there. And I thought that was a little strange too.
Well, it's just this. I guess it's the thing that like it is a story predominantly set in what I would imagine like, despite the very baffling title card of the Far East, is China, right? Like, should we?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
Talking of that though, Nicolas Cage's hair actually looks. I mean, it's essentially at first a bad ponytail, and then essentially a samurai's hair cut. He's got the top knot and then long down the sides, which is sort of classically samurai, right?
we'll get on to the yeah. Should we talk about the way that Cage looks at the end of this? Because my keynote for that is he looks like Lopan from
He
Big
does
Trouble
a
in Little
little
China.
bit.
He's got like
A little bit.
he
Yeah.
looks very much like he looks very much like that actor as well, and he's kind of like he's lost an eye, so like
Yeah.
and but like the
He
other
does
eye
look awesome though.
he's squinting, so like and then his
Yeah.
voice again changes drastically by the end, and it's like,
it's something else again. Now it's like a drunken, crazy version. That really was my favorite stuff with Cage. When he does come back, as Joe was saying, it's just brilliant. He's rubbing a snake on his beard.
so the snake was Cage's like caveat to doing the role. He was like
No.
at one
Oh,
scene,
wow.
I got to have the snake.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love that snake. I just thought it's also just, it almost feels like the role was written specifically for Cage. It's that just like up his alley. You know, I loved all that stuff. And it makes everything else in the film look so horribly boring.
Yeah, he's got this great bit when he first comes in and he says, when he comes back, not when he first comes in, because as you said, he's there for a little bit, and then essentially we've got a movie without Cage, which is sort of upsetting, especially when you're going to talk about it on a Cage-in podcast. I mean, you think, well, what are we going to say? Like, I watched a movie and saw him for 2 minutes, but luckily he comes back and he says, what does he say? He says, the blackguard, as they call it, he goes, oh, the blackguard, they're thick as flies around a goat's arse. And I was like, oh, that's a sound bite if I've ever heard one. You're lucky my wife likes you. Get me my wine. Great stuff, man.
Well,
Like, I was happy about that.
Cage has got some like brilliant lines in this, and you can tell they're probably like from the hip. Like, so like right at the end, like he takes on a load of guards, and like he just comes out with this line, and he says like, "I see you, woman." Like when he's when he's in the throes of death, he's like,
I
honestly,
thought he
talking about
said that.
his dead wife. He's like, "I see you, woman."
I was going to ask you if that's what he says, because I was like, that can't have really been what he said. But it's a great line, and it's, you know, he really just all of that stuff in the end, that final battle scene with him versus all the guards. I mean, fuck, that Cage needed that.
Well, there's like a really interesting character in Cage's character. So yeah, he's called Galleon, like to begin with, but then he gets known, like he kind of becomes this legend in time. So obviously we have this 3 years pass, and in that time, Cage's like character has become known as the White Ghost, which like is a fantastic. Like I want to see a film just called The White Ghost, all about like Cage's character in this,
Ghost
just him
killer.
really chewing the scenery. Oh yeah.
yeah. There was it was quite about that "I see you, woman" line. I noticed quite early on with Christensen, when he gets the princess and decides to help the princess and her little brother escape the blackguard and try and get them to the other generals so he can claim his rightful place as king. There's a bit where in the script they've clearly put this bit in where she starts talking to him and saying, he says, oh, I'm sure a princess's life, blah blah blah, is poo-pooing her life because she's a princess, and she says, you know nothing of what it's like to be a woman. So there's like this statement in the script where whoever's written it or whatever they've written into it has said, let's make a point of this, like this white guy, he's like saying all of this stuff, and she's saying, you know nothing of what it's like to be a woman. I thought, well, this is kind of a statement coming out here. And then she says, you know, we have to, you boys all just run around and fight, and then we have to look after you when you come back from your folly, and then we have to, you know, we have to explain to our children why their fathers are dead. And then a little bit later, Christensen punches a woman straight in the face. And I was like, what? It's a prostitute. Yeah, he punches a prostitute straight in the face. I was like, what is going on? Well, this is mixed messages, man. Like,
well, I
and
think
as well, the princess also says to him, and if this is a successful mission, you'll be justly rewarded.
Awful. I mean, I was like, they're not sure. This is ridiculous now.
Well, I think this is like the problem with scripts that are kind of written by one person and then kind of like taken on, and like, do you know what I mean? Like someone on set, and then like, from what I can imagine, and like just looking, the budget for this film, like,
was looks huge.
Well, it looks huge, but it was 10 million.
Is that cheap or is that expensive?
Like that's cheap.
Yeah, would that be called a micro budget in Hollywood?
Let me take that back. The budget for this is 25 million, which still
Holy fuck!
is small.
Right, wow, okay.
Considering we have films that are like 100 million. Like you look at like
Of course, yeah.
the
the only thing I can imagine, if you've got all these huge armies, you've got to pay for all their armor, you've got to pay for all the extras, but also the cinematography and just arranging those locations, it looks fucking pricey.
But the thing with that is, some of them some of the money on that has gone on Cage. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they kind of like
yeah.
Whereas I feel like this could have been like, obviously, this is a Nicolas Cage podcast, but this could have been a really interesting story if it was kept as a kind of like a Chinese production. Do you know what I mean? Like this kind of like...
Bob mentioned that. Yeah, and he mentioned also maybe they didn't have enough money to keep Cage in the movie for that long, and like that's why he's only bookending it. I mean, what do you think? I mean,
well, we kind of get this weird like sequence in the middle as well. You talk about like Cage only bookending it. We get this. It's a very bizarre film in that we kind of like it alludes to other things. We get this kind of like flashback sequence.
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen, who, for all intents and purposes, has had the same haircut his whole life.
Yeah.
Like we see him as a child, and he's got the same haircut. But like he's being taught by Cage, so like
it's a bit Big Daddy, isn't it? He's like teaching him how to be a little hero.
Or like Karate Kid, or like the Three Ninjas.
Sure, yeah.
That kind of like those kind of like Saturday afternoon films you would have watched. Like, but the thing is, like, it seems quite bizarre because like we don't really get a sense of where they're from, even from that.
No,
like,
not at all. They're just a placeless place, nondescript.
It's like, have they always lived in the kind of East? To use this kind
well, you know, another thing that doesn't help with that, Petros, and I've seen this before in other films, and I know like it's maybe a staple of like B movie kind of like kung fu films to have really bad dubbing. But so many people were dubbed in this film. There were lots of what I assume sort of Chinese actors and actresses who were just speaking English, but many of them were being dubbed for some reason. And I thought it really took like just distracted me and took away from the atmosphere. Why not just have them speak in their actual native tongue, then subtitle it?
Well, yeah, that's the problem. That's a bigger problem in cinema in general, isn't it? It's pandering to a Western, and that's what this film seems like it's doing a lot of the time. Is pandering to a Western audience, and like even with that problem of the white savior, it kind of draws back to that thing of pandering to a Western audience, where this could have been a really decent film. And like, that's not to say like one of the shining like things of this film like is Nicolas Cage. Like, and I'm not just
I absolutely agree. Without him, the film would be lacking in almost every way.
Well, like, and there's like, to draw upon other weird moments in this is there's this so there's a convoy that the prince, the princess, and Hayden Christensen join, and all of a sudden I felt like I was being drawn into like a low budget like live action remake of Aladdin. They all of a sudden go to Agrabah.
Yeah, it's very quick, that change, isn't it? There was no transition, and yeah, they're in this vast desert and camels and they joined. That bit was dubbed. That woman was dubbed in that part. Yeah, if not, it seemed like it. Yeah, she was being dubbed totally. I think even the emperor was dubbed, but the prince, the youngest, he was definitely the prince was he was sort of the most English accented in the entire film. The prince of the Chinese kingdom.
Yeah,
he was like,
sounds like a little Stephen Fry.
It's bizarre, really weird, man. I know what you mean about those flashbacks. What I thought was going to happen during the half, before the flashback happened, I thought, oh, we're not going to see Cage at all, and it's just going to be flashback caging. I thought we were just going to be keep flashback.
Sorry, Petros. One of my favourite flashbacks in it. I think it's the first flashback you see. Well, other than the initial bit, which is sort of a huge flashback. But when Hayden Christensen is in the reeds, he's looking into the reeds. Suddenly, the grass itself seems to turn into Nicolas Cage's face,
Well,
and both me and Joe were cracking up. It's just like a slow transition from grass into Cage.
well, that is what you want. That is like, it's moments like that you want. But like, so when we get to Agrabah, we kind of have this like plot device where the well their cover's blown, like, and it was a very thinly veiled cover to begin with.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway, yeah,
and
they're trying to like. There's no Trojan horse. They're just going in, pretty much.
like the prince and the princess are sold out, and like Hayden Christensen's given a bit more of like the opium to kind of like it goes all groggy, doesn't it? He
Yeah,
passed
yeah.
out.
It's like us on a Friday night. Yeah.
they're taken away, and then like it's kind of a thing of like Hayden Christensen has to get them back, and then we get this like action sequence again that just reminded me of Aladdin.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like him
Yeah.
kind of like jumping about, like bouncing off of like the tops. Do you know what I mean? Like the awnings on the bazaar, and kind of like we get
Yeah.
this,
Sort of Prince of Persia as well.
yeah,
Like, yeah, it's got all of that. But can I say, as ridiculous as some of that might look, I actually thought that very gritty kind of Batman style combat of like guys' heads being like suddenly like necks being broken, arms being twisted, like all of that was really well choreographed and well done. And it's actually it's unusual that you see that kind of Batman Begins style constant combat, outside of literally Batman.
Well, I think that's where it comes down to Nick Powell's experience as a stunt coordinator.
Oh, absolutely, sure, yeah, yeah.
So obviously, like, that's where this film kind of gets its panache and its like oomph from, is this kind of like these sequences of action, whereas it kind of lacks in like like the narrative, like
Yeah, the
aspects of it,
storytelling.
the
Yeah,
storytelling.
yeah.
But the thing is, if it had been that this was wall to wall action, like say like
Yeah.
a Mad Max Fury Road, like
Yeah, yeah.
which is a very similar plot, getting from like point A to point B.
Point B, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if it had been done like that, where it's like, no, they are gonna like, it's gonna be relentless from point A to point B. They're gonna be under attack. It would have been like, great. I don't give a fuck about flashbacks. I don't give a fuck about
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, you're right.
all of this character development, which we get little of anyway. We don't.
Although isn't this Season of the Witch that you're describing?
But yeah, which is very bizarre, and I'd love to know why Nicolas Cage thought, like, after Season of the Witch, that he'd be like, I don't know, whether it's a case of, oh, that didn't do too well, I'll try again. But then, like,
Yeah.
he looks like he's having loads of fun.
Definitely. I mean, it's that snake that brought him in. Like you say, he thought, okay, I like this, because I thought that what had happened, because I was thinking exactly that. Why would Cage do another of the Season of the Witch? And I mean, this film for me is far better than Season of the Witch, just for those fight scenes and just for Cage's pure. It really is a good performance from him, and it's great to see him like that. I think like he really likes it, and he's like, my wife, they cut out her tongue, and he's got, he's kind of freaking out most of the time, which I want that from Cage. I don't like his sort of quietness in Season of the Witch, and I like his sort of fierceness in this kind of thing, and he's like saying these mad things about goats' asses and like, where's my wine, all this kind of stuff. I was like, this is really good. Yeah, I really like Nick in it, but there is something very strange about all of that plot line that I can't quite put. It's just like what you're talking about. I mean, there's no point in saying it again. That it's loads of producers and loads of people coming in and just changing things all along the way. Yeah, they're just changing things all along the way. They must have been like just ad-libbing lines and then saying, "Oh." Also, the bit where Christensen takes a sort of Robin Hood bow and arrow shot that goes sort of a bit Tom and Jerry. It goes all the way over all the hills and then hits the guy on a horse who's running off with a peasant woman that he's trying to pillage, I imagine. And they save the woman, and she just carries on with them for the rest of the film, saying nothing. But she's there to the very end. And I was like, what is this about? And then at the very end, she's not there. And I thought, what's happened? What these holes are insane.
Well, there's
Yeah.
like we get the kind of like 2/3 through the film. Well, no, it's not even that. It's literally in the last quarter of the film. All of a sudden, we have this moment where Hayden Christensen's character and the princess like fall in love instantly. And it's like they're kind
Yeah.
of like outside, like talking, and it's like, oh, they fall into each other's arms and have like a loving embrace. And it's like, well, you're only doing this as on like watching it as like on what the filmmaker's doing. So it's like you're only doing this to kind of like do like show us what is like, do you know what I mean? Like make us feel
Yeah, it's a
something
strange. Yeah, it's a
for what is
strange beat,
coming.
isn't it?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like we didn't need this. It's kind of like he's already got his arc that he is this kind of troubled guy who like, and we do learn a bit about like him as a crusader when he's like back with Cage, because um Cage has this like perception of him that he went into these like temples and he went into like people's houses and was killing
Yeah.
women and children, and it turns out that wasn't the case, but like it could have been.
Yeah.
Like it could have been the case
It's
because like
kind of confusing.
they were scared of what he could have done, so they killed themselves anyway. It's like, so either way,
Mm.
you were
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
just
like,
well, at first we were worried. I mean, without speaking too darkly, that they were really suggesting he did some really horrible shit. But then it's like, oh, we didn't really do that kind of horrible shit. But obviously he was involved in it, so we're supposed to kind of not like him, but like him at the same time. But you don't really like him because he's Hayden Christensen anyway.
well, it's not just the fact that he's Hayden Christensen; it's the fact that like his character is two-dimensional. It's like it's not like as anti-heroes go. If the anti-hero was played by Cage, we would have got some kind of like pizzazz to him. Do you know what I mean? We'd have got some kind of character, whether it's like told in the story or just from the performance itself. Whereas like Hayden Christensen, we very much get this like IKEA furniture performance.
Yeah. Do you know where it was shot? Like, you know, by any chance? Because I don't. But like at one point where you're looking over these incredible mountains, and the characters, just everything in the background, we weren't sure if it was really good CGI or just an incredibly beautiful place. And there was so many moments in it where I thought, wow, like I would really love to be anywhere like that at any point in my life. It's just so incredible.
Really, it should be like a holiday advert, like a Trivago, like visit this place kind of advert with like Cage guiding you as a one-eyed kind of come on holiday, you fucking goat-faced fuck.
Yeah, totally. I loved it. And also, I mean, again, I did Christensen. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I remember him from the Star Wars films. He seemed recognizable, but that's again because I thought he was a football player. It's kind of like, you know, he could have been any sort of mid-20-year-old football player. And I don't know. I think that is one of the best things of this film is that its color grading was brilliant and its locations were fantastic. Its fight scenes were really good. I thought they were really good. A couple of times I was like, "Whoa, nice!" And I thought I'm not watching enough fighting films.
I don't even like action that much, and I like some of this action, so I think that says a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Same. I mean, same here.
Well, to the point of where this was shot. So it was shot in Beijing, Yunnan, and Boding, China. So it's all filmed in China. So
Oh wow, yeah. Well, there we go. Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, you know, I'd love to go and see those places with my own tiny eyes.
So I guess a part of like the reason for Cage doing this is, it's a lovely holiday to China.
As we know, Cage does love Asian women, so perhaps that was a nice holiday bonus as well.
Yep.
Perhaps we'll have to ask his sons. I imagine.
Jesus.
Yeah,
So
I know.
So IMDb trivia here. This is very lax on trivia. The only piece of trivia on there, apart from the fact that this was banned in Hong Kong, is that Hayden Christensen sprained his ankle twice whilst filming this film.
I mean, it's like a nothing bit of trivia, isn't it?
Does that mean he was doing his own stunts?
It seems that no.
Or you can sprain your ankle pretty easily.
He was just on his way to the canteen, like just tripped over on a sausage.
Yeah, or like dismantling a horse. Do you know what I mean? Couldn't get his foot out of the stirrups in time. Just twisted it a bit, sprained an ankle. Like as we said, like Hayden Christensen hasn't really been doing much in regards to films. We say that. Like let's have a look, shall we, at what Hayden Christensen has been doing in the times between Star Wars, which 2005 and 2008 was Jumper, which is the last recorded
the swan song.
So he hasn't done much.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's a hard act to follow, isn't it? When you're the kind of poster child of the Star Wars films. I mean, you can't really. Where do you go from there? You're sort of like people that only know you for this one thing, and it's like they didn't really want you in anything else unless you're like Ewan McGregor and you kind of pre-existed as another. What do you call it? A Scottish smackhead.
Yeah. No, I mean that is sort of what I thought they were trying to make him out to be at some point, but
Well, it's that thing as well that like it's not even the fact that like he's just typecast or like known for being Anakin Skywalker. It's the fact that like.
Oh no way! He was. Is that who he was? I know. No way.
Yeah,
I've just put that together.
In episodes 2 and 3, he's Anakin Skywalker. So,
jeez, man, that's blown my mind. When you were saying he's a guy from Star Wars, I was like, I must not have seen that.
Thought he was like the dwarf in the little bear costume.
Oh man, I kind of feel for him now. I feel for him.
Well, it's the fact that he was pretty wooden in those, and like he's got a lot of criticism for his performance in those films.
Well, to be fair, there aren't that many people in it who aren't wooden. I mean, especially in the new ones. I mean, the old ones, obviously, there's some strong performances, but like really, come on. I mean, no one was good in that. I mean, it's like Jar Jar Binks' world, isn't it? I mean, it can't be good. No one's doing their best.
Well, so
yeah, the best thing about it was Pod Racer, the game, the arcade game. I love that.
So I guess before we get too far off track, well, I could happily talk about pod racing all night. And is it? Well, who's that guy who speaks like that? He's like, Anakin.
Yeah.
Is it Guido or something like that?
What you're talking about? The little alien guy who's also got the goggles.
Yeah,
I love
hey,
that guy.
Anakin. Yeah, he's like kind of like I don't know, like he's like a pit.
Yeah, I loved it. I
guy.
used to play that. I used to play that guy in the game. That was like my dude.
So yeah, let's talk about the ending of this film, which is just like a 10-minute bloodbath, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually kind of a strong ending. That all the fighting stuff is really strong. Like Cage getting sort of quite symbolically and literally sort of shish kebabbed by 5 different dudes, while he's kind of still continuing to fight, finally collapsing, and there's bombs in the cave, and there's all kinds of mad shit like that. But the actual very last bit where you've got the graves, and then you see like everything's going well with like China. Cage is dead, and then you're not really sure. Like Joe was saying, you're not really sure. Is this the afterlife or not? Like, did Hayden die?
Yeah, we were wondering if that was another Gladiator reference of Hayden's dead, and now because we do see him sort of trot off on a horse, but that's after and it looks like that he's died,
Well, yeah,
and
because he gets
the
stabbed.
princess has.
He gets stabbed, doesn't he? He gets stabbed
Yeah.
by the like warrior prince who's not happy.
Yeah, the
about
older brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets, and it's that ending is confusing. It's like I was in the same boat. It's like, is he dead, or did he go like, I could have this life with her, but like the culture wouldn't understand. She's a princess. She must marry like, do you know what I mean? Like culturally must
Yeah.
marry another prince from another province or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do this. Or is
there are two graves next to each other. There's two graves. Now, was that Cage's character? What was the character called? The White Ghost. It was it Cage's character and his wife's character that were the graves, or was it Cage and Hayden? Because of course Cage had brought him up, and then was it Hayden sort of symbolically in the afterlife trotting away? That's madly confusing. The more I think about it, the more confused I get. Yeah, he didn't have wounds. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know, and I guess that is the sign of just a kind of like a weak ending, isn't it? Like just a film.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
If you're left at the end of a film, and it's not even like an interesting, ambiguous ending. Like it's not like a David Lynch, where at the end of it you're going, "Whoa, man, what did I just watch?" It's more like, "Huh?" Like,
Yeah.
It's more
Yeah, it was good to see that bit with Cage though is actually brilliant. Like when he's being sliced up all over the place and he's fighting very tough. In fact, at one point, I think just before his death, and he's quite literally got 7 like spears in him, and like he's there, and he sort of goes for the sword of the older brother. And I think there's a little nod from the older brother as in to say, you too are a fine warrior.
Yeah,
Just briefly.
He has a great line as well when he's like being impaled, where he's like, "You want me blood? You want me blood?"
Yeah, this could be, that could be like an excerpt from like The Lighthouse, couldn't it?
Yeah. It's even the pronunciation of it. It's like, "You want me blood? You want me blood?" I'm saying it like I'm some kind of like a dance hall like MC. Do you know what I mean? You want me blood? You want me blood? I don't.
You like me lobster?
Yeah.
No, but it is. I actually like. Even at first, I wasn't down with Cage's voice, but as he gets into it, by the end, he did a great job of that kind of drunken slurring and making. I actually kind of believed in his character a bit. Well, there's a bit where the boy's sort of shooting arrows and Cage is getting drunk and he's like, that gets rid of the demons or whatever, as long as you can keep them at bay. And he's like glugging this wine. I was really like, yeah, man, fuck, I love this character. This guy's my idol.
That's my medicine.
Perfect. So as we come to like the end of this, is there like a standout Cage moment for both of you? Start with you, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the "Where's my wine" line. It's got to be that, because I loved getting back to that, and he did "Where's my wine?" Pulling wine like a champion from a leather satchel. Yeah, robbing a snake. Brilliant, man. Like that was great.
I'll say, just to be different to Joe, because I probably would have said that as well. I'll say the standout bit for me is at the very beginning when Hayden Christensen is going mental and killing all of these people in some kind of far distant land, and we see Cage strangely unharmed. No one's attacking him, just walking as if he's stoned, walking through the battlefield, just staring at Christensen wherever he goes, and just like following him into places. That's my standout bit.
What about you? What's yours?
I've got to say, it's the moment when he says, he says about like the like a goat's fart when he says to Hayden Christensen, doesn't he? He says like I could hear that over a farting goat or something like that. He just kind of goes a
Yeah,
little bit like he goes extra Scottish on that moment. It's just like
yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. His accent at that bit he is going. He goes from sort of Scottish to an American doing an English accent, then back to Cage. And when he goes back to Cage, it's right.
well,
It
it's when
feels right.
yeah, it feels a bit like he's doing a Chinese accent slightly in points at the end as well, and it's like, whoa, like
It's
yeah,
yeah, he's kind of yeah. But I
like
mean, it also it allows it gives Cage the correct vehicle to use his, as you know, as I think you've referred to him before, as like this kind of kabuki style, wild performance acting thing. It gives him that vehicle, and you know, the last film I saw with you, Petros, was that one about the gun. What's it called?
Tokarev.
Like Tokarev. And in that film, that's a good example of a movie where it's not the correct vehicle for Cage. He's not given enough moments to really be himself. And this was one where, even though it doesn't have as much Cage in it, it gives him the right number of moments to freak out.
Yeah, to like amp up and kind of cage out, as it were. Which leads me
Exactly. Yeah.
perfectly to my three questions that I ask everyone at the end of these, whilst watching these films. Is um, first of all, does Nick Cage have bad hair in this movie?
I would say by the judgment of other wigs in different Cage films, yes. But at the same time, it's done in a better way than other Nicolas Cage wigs. But it is still a crazy wig.
And like, secondly, I'll throw over to Joe for this one. Does he have a crazy voice?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's all over the place. It's like a roller coaster.
Well, it's like an Indiana Jones map. You know, like those sequences in Indiana Jones where we see like the pinpoints on a map. That's what his
Yeah,
voice is doing throughout this movie. It's like, oh, we're over here. No, the plane's going over here.
yeah.
He is just got he's got a Lonely Planet guide to the world open, just like flicking through and pointing at a page, going, right, now I'm going to be doing this. Now I'm going to be doing that. It's yeah, it's bizarre and it's great. And well, back to you both on this one. Do we get any Cage freakouts, and if so, what are they?
I think there were just several moments. There are several moments where he seems to freak out. Moments toward the end. Moments in the middle. I mean, maybe not full on as some other films, but there are moments where he's kind of roaring and shouting and saying slightly unintelligible things. And yeah, you're lucky my wife likes you. Where's the wine? Stuff, they are these kind of miniature but great freakouts. So yes.
Absolutely, and like you said, Petros, yeah, Becker's flies around a goat's arse or whatever it was. You've got those two. I suppose maybe those two are the. It's not really. No, I suppose that's not a freak out, is it? There is a bit where he is kind of freaking out, and he's shaking manically and just drinking the wine and talking to him about the boy's arrows. I don't know. Are they freakouts? Because they're not freakouts like in comparison to Cage freakouts, really. But I think at least he's on, say, of a Cageometer of 10. At least most of the time he's between a 4 and 7 ish.
Well, yeah, he's on a simmer. He's on a simmer throughout, as opposed to we
Yeah.
we never get a boil.
I mean, I've got to say, just sorry, this is maybe not to answer any one of these specific questions, but this was a film. When finally Cage comes back after that hiatus in the middle, when you finally see him there in the dark with his snake, it reminded me exactly why I like Nicolas Cage. It just was like it just sort of I was like, yes, I was so excited to have him back. He was so brilliantly different from how he was in the beginning, and I just thought Cage, he's the only man for this job.
Perfect. So, final question for this is: would you recommend people watch Outcast?
I would say, yeah. I would say, yeah.
And I would totally agree. I would say yes. Yeah. I
Would
would
you?
say that. I would say maybe Just bear in mind that the middle won't have much of him. But again, like Bob said, it's kind of like a great travel show for some beautiful parts of China that you may never see anywhere else, shot so beautifully.
Perfect. So, in regards to you guys and Tonight with Bob and Joe and the Infinite Pub Crawl, where can people keep up to date with what you're doing, and where can people find you?
We've got a YouTube. I think it's just called Tonight with Bob and Joe. You can maybe find us on there. Infinite Pub Crawl can be found.
Yeah, and also I think if you just Google Tonight with Bob and Joe, probably our podcast, our first season, probably comes up, and you can listen to it somewhere along those lines. But we do have a new show on its way, and soon. It's not a podcast; it's like a vodcast. Is that what they call them? Yeah, it's we're sort of editing and working it out. But yeah, something to look forward to.
Perfect. And I will put every means of how people can contact you guys and all the crazy things you're up to, like that aren't your personal accounts. Obviously, all above board and
No,
professional.
give him my phone number, Petros. Just
Perfect.
tell him to call me any time of night,
I'll put that
especially
in
if they're lonely.
I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll put it
Bless
on.
you.
I'll put it on pub toilets up and down the country.
Oh,
As
fantastic.
Amazing. Bob, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure to be caged in with you both.
Bless you, Petros. Take care, man.
Yeah, love you, Petros.
And there we have it, guys. My conversation with Bob and Joe about Outcast. And as they said, you can keep up to whatever Bob and Joe are doing on social media. You can just type in on Facebook Tonight with Bob and Joe, or go over to Twitter, which is Tonight Podcast. They were lucky to get that handle, I'll tell you that. So if you had any differing opinions to me, Bob and Joe, regarding Outcast, please get in touch on all the usual channels. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, all at Caged In Pod. Or if you really want to chew my ear off about what you thought about it, please write me an email, which is cagedinpod@gmail.com. And for those of you who haven't heard, maybe this is your first time listening, or you just didn't listen to last week's one, until the 31st of August, I'll be running a competition, and you get 2 prizes with that, which is a Caged In and Tim Hornsby art print, which is a Nick Cage as Superman to commemorate the ill-fated and never released Superman Lives, which is a comic book cover designed by Tim that just looks amazing, and I write on the back a unique Nicolas Cage quote and number them. You can buy one of those, or you can win them in this competition. I'll tell you about how you can buy them after I've told you all about the competition. All you got to do is tell me what your favourite Nicolas Cage film and why. You can do that through all the channels I've told you, social media, email, or you can go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rate and review with what your favourite Nicolas Cage film is and why. And I will be picking either at random or whichever is my favourite. I'm still undecided. Perfect. Yeah, if you want to buy one of those prints, if you don't fancy your chances of winning it, you can do that. It's cagedinpodcast.limitedrun.com. Yeah, go over there. They're pretty fun, and all the money will be going to doing more weird and wonderful things over here at Caged In. There's a couple of omissions into this episode. So Bob and Joe mentioned after we finished recording that I sounded like I was quite hard on the film in my intro. Yeah, kind of, but they haven't watched it twice. They had just watched it, so they had a difference of opinion on me. My opinion on it is Cage is great, obviously, and I think you got that from the episode. My only thing is that it's quite a forgettable film, which is a real shame. I think one of the real standouts in it is Nicolas Cage's performance, and that's what makes this podcast a real joy to do. So please, if you're subscribed at midday today, you will probably find something hitting your podcatcher wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Acast, wherever really. You will see a interview I did with James Dormer, the writer of this very film. That will be with you at midday, or if you're listening in the future, that will already be there. That will be the next episode available to listen to. And next week's episode, I will be joined by the amazing Rich Wilson, the godfather of talking about mental health in the most palatable way possible, and just a fantastic comedian and a fantastic bloke. And we will be talking about The Runner. So if you want to watch that in preparation for that episode, that would be great. And you can do that in the UK by going over to Amazon Prime, or if you are listening and you live in the US, you can go over to Netflix to watch that one. Perfect. So as always, I have been Petrus Petsilvus. I have been Caged In. You have been amazing. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week. Bye.